So good morning. I'm so excited this morning. Thank you everyone for joining. Today is Lisa Mitchell and she is a treasure. So I'm going to read all the things because I'm going to mess them up because girl, you do a lot. So she is the founder and CEO of Pulse Analytics, which I can't wait to talk about. She's a body language expert, a keynote speaker, a social entrepreneur, an executive communication strategist. She's an executive coach. She's a board member of many things. Holy crap. Girl, you do a lot. So what would you say? Like if you had to sum it up, you're like, what do you do?
I like to build things that change communities for the better.
Oh my God, I love that so much. So we're going to have her go into more, obviously more of what she does, but full disclosure, we met, so we are friends. We met at a women's corporate talk, basically. You gave a talk about body language. And I'm going to say that she has screwed some stuff up for me in a good way. Like I now look around a room and I'm like, which way are their feet pointing? What's happening here? And it's amazing. And some people you might recognize her from TV. You also do some body language talks on the news.
Practical communication tips that people can just use to level up in little ways every day. Knowledge is
power. So cool. It's so cool. It's scary being around you sometimes because I'm like, am I giving off the right vibe? Am I not? I don't really know. So I'm excited about this. So I want you to share I want you to share a lot about you, but one, what is a day for you? I want to talk about Pulse Analytics. And then after that, I want to talk a little bit about some body language stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So tell me what you do.
I'm just along for the ride today. So it's nice not to be doing interviewing for once. So show up and enjoy great questions. So yeah. So the what does a day look for me question is one of my favorites because it depends on the day. It depends on the part of the day because I am Jeff Goings termed the type of work, and I loved it. Gave me so much freedom to have a word or a phrase around my work. And he said that he lives a portfolio life.
Okay.
And that was like the perfect, I struggled for so long because I used to be a thing for a place. Early in my career, I had a very traditional kind of corporate ladder climbing career. I was a thing for a place for almost 18 years. It was easy to tell people what my job title was and who I worked for. But when I started going down the entrepreneurial track, it got really vague.
Yeah.
And I'm in some weird nichey little spaces. So it was really hard for people to understand, like, did I have a job? Like, what do you mean you have a business? And what is that about? How do you have a business that's body language? Like, what is that even real? Like, are you unemployed? Do you need money? So it was for me to say portfolio life because my commitment to myself is that every single day I'm going to do work that lights me up. And when I get out of alignment and it starts to be energy draining instead of energy giving, I know it's time for me to shift. And
my gosh. For the record, that's a pull quote. Just be ready for that. That's so good. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, because you compromise yourself to make other people comfortable with you. And I quit doing that about 6 or 7 years ago. I was just like, done. Like, it's not my job to make you comfortable anymore. And I'm the one that has to get up and walk into this life every day. And I know how terrible it feels when you hate what you're walking into. And I won't do it anymore. And it comes with a cost, right? For sure. It definitely comes with the financial cost and sometimes a reputation cost and all sorts of things. When people can't figure you out, all of a sudden you go in the other bucket.
Yep.
So there's definitely a cost to that. I don't want to make it seem like you just flip a switch and everything's grand. But for me, I am engaged in things that I find meaningful, that are legacy building and that have a positive impact. And whether that's working in the nonprofit space with the organizations that I care about, whether that's on the corporate space and whether that's in technology, like if there's no purpose, I'm out. And it doesn't always feel easy to transition from one thing to another, but it's where I end up in a space where I'm like, I can't wait to start working.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so good. So tell us about Pulse Analytics. So you have this portfolio life and you have now started your own.
She just wants to be part of the conversation.
Alexa just wants to be part of the conversation.
I'm a little outshined right now.
That was a little scary, everybody. Okay. So tell us what is Pulse Analytics? What does that do? So you have this portfolio of things that you do, and then all of a sudden you're like, I want to do one thing all in as that as that founder and CEO, which is scary. Tell me about that. Tell me what that is.
The good news is that it came from a really solid foundation with an amazing co-founder that we already vibe. Like, we've worked together. We've been working together on the nonprofit front. So my co-founder is Marlon Jackson. He founded the Fight for Life Foundation years ago. I've been with Fight for Life Foundation as very part-time staff for almost 4 years now.
Okay.
Focusing on building technology to make an amazing curriculum around social emotional learning scalable, because we want more kids, more educators to have this tool and this resource. And also the data behind how is this changing students for the better? How is this changing educational systems in a positive way? How is this disrupting the prison, the school to prison pipeline? Nobody was doing data around that from a social emotional standpoint. So we spun up that product that kind of turned into its own ed tech company, kind of on accident, just looking for a mechanism to make that information more available. And when this year, obviously COVID kind of flipped everything. I went from having almost 30 keynote speeches all over the country to I did 2 last year. So my other business, Power Body Language, it was illegal for me to do my job last year in many states. Like, literally could not get people in a room.
Right.
So the timing was fortuitous, as odd as that sounds. And that, coupled with just the frustration and heartbreak that Marlon and I both had around social injustice, and watching our country just be so terribly divided, so many people feeling so powerless and not connecting with the resources that they needed, and law enforcement and citizen relations, like, just such a big problem. But we already had a technology infrastructure that can help facilitate better communication, accountability, and transparency. So we're like, okay, let's run. Like, we spun off a for-profit company. We reimagined the platform. We found a new way to utilize the lessons that we had learned building the other platform, working with great development partners that already know why we do what we do and how we want to do it. So we really hit the ground running, and it's just expedited us getting to market, creating the product, getting buy-in. So everything we've been doing for the last 4 years just was basically like the base camp for us launching into the new company. So it really was an evolution that was brought together by timing and need.
Yeah.
It just absolutely felt right. Like, it really, I didn't even mourn the loss of my other business, which still technically is around, but again, you still can't gather, and keynote speakers with no audience don't speak. Weird how that happens. Because this has been so fulfilling and so timely, and I think really just so needed. Like, my energy needs to be here.
Yeah.
Right. It's too big of a problem not to work on.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it kind of hit that bucket of, that transition of how you got there. I mean, that story is just so poignant and so timely. My favorite conversations that I've had, whether here, elsewhere, those passion projects, where does that come from? Your heart to filling a social need. It's just so important, and it's just so good. So let's skip over that part, because you've already checked that box for me.
Like, I didn't choose this life chose me, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Like, I just need on a shirt. That's just what I need on a shirt. So, I mean, obviously COVID, and you haven't been able to, do the speaking part, but, whether it's personal or even getting Pulse Analytix out there, like, where have you found some struggle with that, with anything?
Well, I think just so much comes from casual conversation and happenstance, and just walking into a room with no agenda and seeing what opportunities come to you. That element, that kind of magic, has been put on a shelf right now, just circumstantially. And so we have had to be so much more intentional about asking for what we need, because it's not just happening. It's like, I need a person who is in this field or this agency, or I need to get connected with someone who knows how to do this thing with a product, right? So it's really having to be deliberate. Which I don't like to ask for help. I can do it myself, right? Says
every we're gonna get to that ask here.
Every independent woman everywhere, I do myself.
I always joke, every time I ask the ask question, every woman hates that question. Every single one, which is good and bad. One, we have, a society of women that are so independent that we literally don't want to ask for help, but also hoping to build a community where people feel confident enough that if they ask, they shall receive, or at least be received in a positive way. So where have you found, because we're going to get to those two questions, which you have teed up beautifully, which we're going to circle back to, but tell me where some of the delight has come, because it's been a year.
Yeah.
So, and even it's been 28 days of crazy. So
yes.
where have you been finding joy yourself?
I love that question. For me, a lot of it, I've been doing a lot of work of kind of untangling the internal craziness. And for me, it's been like joy has come through surrender. Like if one lesson came out of last year, it's like, I don't have nearly the amount of control that I thought I did. I can't work my way out of the circumstances of last year. That doesn't mean I'm a victim. It just means like, I showed up, I did what I could. There are some things I could not win. I just could not win, no matter how educated, prepared, motivated I was. Like it just, everything I've told myself I'm in control of, I'm not.
Yeah.
And so I fought against that for a while and felt like a failure. And if only I did this, or I need to pivot more, or I need more digital products, or all the stuff when you're fighting surrender, all the things you throw at it. And I finally am just like, no, like, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to know that I'm supported. I'm going to show up every day and do the next right thing. And so for me, joy has come when I let go of the struggle of control. And that's hard because I am a type A overachiever. I'm going to get it done. You're like, yeah, tell me something I don't already know. But it really, from a mindset, and that's in my commitment for 2021 is I am going to meet myself every day. Yeah. So whether it's 10 minutes of meditation or 5 minutes of journaling or listening to a song I love, or just something with myself, which sounds weird because you're like literally in your body all the time. Like I'm in my body all the time, but I'm not in my mind and I'm not in my spirit very often. Mm-hmm. So like meet myself every single day without exception.
Yeah.
In a loving way, not a like, oh, you look really fat today kind of way. Right. Like, and hey, you're a valid human and there's worth in you and you don't have to do anything to prove it. Right. So just taking that time, resetting the foundation, that has allowed me to really enjoy and get joy in so many more things because I'm not always feeling behind and I'm not always feeling frantic.
Oh, that's so good.
Cool. Like
that's so good.
Yeah. So I'm much more joyful now that I have quit trying to create joy, if that makes sense.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. I think a lot of people listening will actually get that. I mean, I listened to a meditation recently that was very much on you cannot feel and think at the same time. So you either going to feel something or you're going to feel and all of a sudden stop feeling and start thinking about what you think you're feeling.
Right. So you can judge yourself to make sure
you're
in the right way.
Exactly. So no, I completely understand. I mean, that changed my whole perspective. I was like, am I feeling? Am I thinking? It's magical. So I want to go back to a point that you made earlier about coming back to that intentional ask, right? So women, we as a whole don't like asking for help. But like back to that intentional ask, how can the community, ours, bigger than ours, niche-y, whatever that is, how can the community show up for you? What are a few of those intentional asks, big, small?
Yeah, I think right now we really need advocates and champions for what we're doing and why we're doing it from a company standpoint. Getting on board with Pulse Analytics, encouraging, downloading it yourself, getting your friends on it. A big component is citizens trusting what will be done with what they provide, right? So we can't, even though law enforcement supports it, we can't have them push it out because there's such a huge distrust and rightfully so of the intention behind it. So we know we have a Herculean task in getting citizens, many of whom feel unheard, many of whom feel disenchanted, many of whom feel victimized, to trust us, to interact with us in a way that's going to take the data that they give us and make real positive change, whether it's policy or whether it's process or whether it's advocacy. Like that is a huge act of trust. And we don't undervalue that. So when it is available to be used, just getting people to engage, give us the benefit of the doubt, let us prove to you positive intentions. Like our ask is just try us, right?
Right.
Like, trust us and try us. And it's a huge ask, but that citizen trust and that engagement is what drives the entire mechanism for change, for policy change, for advocacy groups, or getting them the services that they need to have a better quality of life. Like they have to play to win, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many companies that use data in a predatory way. I mean, you look at what Facebook just did as far as defaulting you to letting them see every single thing that you do on your device, even when you're in the app, right? You look at what Google's been accused of doing, of Cambridge Analytica. It doesn't stop when it comes to how data has been weaponized against people, their own data. And so using data in a way that has permission and is working in their favor is kind of a shift in mindset, because it's been so predatory and felt so long. So just having the opportunity to really prove that this is our intention, is then executing on that is going to be paramount for the success overall, and for changing communities and helping them get what they need.
I mean, those that have listened to me
and
before.
Funders, people that want
and funders, money,
angel investors, VC funds, people who just really care about social justice and having equality and having an easy way to report discrimination, and have someone then back you up and take action on that as your advocate. Like there's so many people that have a heart for that. They just don't know how to translate and support that. And this is a great opportunity for people in a tangible way.
Yeah.
Invest in something that's executing on what they want to see happen.
Oh, I get goosebumps every time I talk to a social entrepreneur. I mean, it's literally changing the world. And to be honest, and I'm a little biased, but I think women make the best social entrepreneurs anyway. I think we feel things in a different way. I think we come from, not that men don't come from, an honest, good place. Like obviously Marlon does. He's been doing work for decades in this space, but really women come from a different place, and it's deep and it's rooted and, it's familial. So like, I just really love the work that you're doing. So I want to come back to something you said earlier, which was you were talking about legacy building, right? So that tees up perfect for me. I want to know, what is that legacy that you're building for you? So when at the, end of the road, it always sounds so morbid, at the end of the road, when you're done, maybe it's pulse and it blows up and you've changed the world, or maybe it's something different, but what do you want your legacy to be? Indie, bigger than indie?
Oh yeah, no, I think, one of my mantras, and I actually believe it now, is that I'm limitless, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's risk plus bravery equals limitless, right? And so for me, I want people from a personal, people who know me, to say that I was brave and I was a risk taker, and that I was driven to leave things better than I found them, which is like such a cliche thing, but it really is a guiding, like, do I have the opportunity to leave this organization, this nonprofit, this business, this community better than I found it? Mm-hmm. The answer is no. It's a no for me. It's a good filtering mechanism, but she always left things better than she found them. Like that I think would be one of the greatest and most gracious ways that someone speaking of me in my absence would be able to describe me. Like if I can get that, if I can get my daughter to say, my mom was better than she found them, that's legacy, right? Like that's what really matters. And hearing her say, we had a conversation the other day about just mindsets, and she's making some important decisions in high school, looking for career path, and just to hear her say, well, I know whatever I want to do, you're going to support me in doing that. And if that's not the right thing, you're okay if I change my mind. And I'm like, okay, like
I'm doing something right.
This is okay.
Yeah.
Like, this is the beginning of legacy, when your teenage daughter can be, oh, well, you're going to accept me no matter what I do, so I can be okay to try things.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I love that so much. So we have talked about the bulk, right, of what I really wanted to get at and that legacy, but I don't want to end yet, right? We've done my normal float. I know we can do this forever. I don't even need to take client calls today. But I am so curious about your history with body language, because I think, again, as women, we interpret this. I think that women as a whole are so much more empathetic. And I think that we read things without realizing that we read them. Can you touch on, and granted, want to be cognizant of time since I'm now interview number 2 of you, but how did you come into body language?
Yeah, well, I think the short version is when I had about 10 years ago now, I had this total like nuclear reset of my life. Like I closed my businesses down, I left my marriage, I reset everything, and which was painful and expensive and all of those terrible things because I wasn't happy waking up in my life and I wasn't going to do it anymore. But as I was doing the postmortem on like, this shouldn't have happened to me. Like I am smart, I'm motivated, I'm a high achiever, I don't lose. And I lost in every bucket of life, all lost at the same time, or that's what it felt like at the time. And in the postmortem and those moments when I quit blaming other people and took ownership and was like, man, what did I do? It was all around communication. It's like, I wasn't paying attention to what other people were telling me, or more importantly, not telling me, but showing me. I was not understanding what I was seeing, not paying close enough attention. And I was not communicating proactively or powerfully for myself. So I didn't let anybody know there was a fire until the house was fully engulfed. Right.
Right.
So I'm like, I can't do this again. It's expensive. It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. And I don't want to work too hard to fix it. So the quickest, being a scientific minded person, I'm like, there's got to be a hack, right? So how can I level up quickly without having to like go into a new degree program?
Right.
And body language for me, when I found the concept, it was so simple. And to your point, we're already doing so much of it, but having the power to not just see things, but to understand the driver behind what you're seeing, to know when someone is not telling you information or not being truthful with you, and understanding how can I pull the levers I need to pull to be really effective, influential, likable, convey warmth, show up for people in a way that makes them feel really honored. It's all there's a science behind it. And for me, that was fascinating. So you can learn the mechanics, but the knowledge, the internal processing of knowing how am I showing up in a room and is it hurting or helping me? And then being able to know what else to do to move you towards a goal is incredibly powerful. And the thing I love, and the reason I rooted so deeply in body language, is it is a great equalizer. Like I teach the same thing to third graders that I do to CEOs. It's not dependent on education. It's not dependent on wealth. It's not dependent on socioeconomic standing. It is like, are you a human? Yes or no? And it's for any range of neurodiversity. Right. So there's lots of little ways that we can be so much more effective and compassionate to people who process and communicate differently than we do. When we understand why. So getting rid of that fear and that stigma of people who communicate and process differently than you just allows you to be such a great partner to anyone that you meet, not just people that act and look and sound like you.
Right. Oh, I could talk to you all day. So I want to put you on the spot because obviously I don't want to drag you out for 2 interviews in one, but could you give us, and this is a little on the spot, so I apologize for that, but I'm just so fascinating, give like 3 tips, whether you're on Zoom or something in your own life, or, just a couple tips maybe to share with this audience that they could show up or read better.
Yeah, I have a ton. I'll try to keep it.
I know you have so many.
I can go with this. I think right now, especially on virtual communications, because so many people, like for me, I forget that Zoom is new to people because I've been using it for years. And it really, nothing should change when you're on video. So if you and I were sitting across having coffee from each other at Provider, which hopefully we get to again.
Oh, I miss it.
I want you to have the same experience with me from an animation, emotionality, vocal tonality, taking up space, gesturing, moving. I don't want to edit myself or tamp myself down at all on video because that's robbing people of the experience. And I think so many people feel like they have to like I can't move, I can't emote, I can't change my vocal tonality. I have to be electronic because I'm on a device. and you kill your own vibe, and you make it so much harder for people to enjoy interacting with you. So just, practice like you play, right? Be on screen the same way you are when you're in the room with somebody. Don't save that energy and that experience. Like, don't punish people because you can't be in a room with them right now. Like, bring your fullness, like own your fullness, bring your whole self into the interaction, because it's way more fun for you and way more fun to interact with you.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because it's true. If I feel buttoned on a Zoom call, my cup is not full. I do feel drained. I did not connect. I love that. Okay, give me another one.
Yeah, the other thing I think is really to just pay attention to what is different when you're interacting with someone. So there's a technique called baselining, which is like basically taking a mental snapshot of a person when you first start interacting with them. So what are their facial expressions? How much do they gesture? How do they hold themselves? What's their vocal tone, rate of speech like? So just kind of snapshot that. Mm-hmm. And then pay attention to when they appear or sound different throughout your interaction. So when does energy go up? When does energy go down? When do they get more quiet? When do they lean in? Right? Because they're giving you cues of like, a lean in is like, yeah, more, this is my thing.
This is me all the time.
Right? And that's such a great cue. But if you aren't looking for it, you can miss an opportunity to go deeper into something that someone is really connecting with. And man, what a missed opportunity. Same thing if you're trying to connect and you see somebody distancing or somebody blocking or somebody offsetting or just these subtle little or maybe a drop in vocal tone when it isn't something that is like an intimated fact. It's just like a lower energy. They're responding differently. Don't linger there. They're not on the ride with you. They don't want to stay there. Bring it back to something. But so honor the person across from you by really understanding their cues and then building momentum on the positive and not lingering on the negative. Like that just feels so much better to the person across from you. And I think that's really, really key. And I think when you're trying to connect with somebody, honoring how they want to be connected with is the best thing you can do to somebody on the other side of your face.
I love that so much. I want to end right there.
Because those are old.
But those are so perfect. Honoring the person on the other side, I think is just a beautiful way to end. I'm really grateful for you. I know that I took you on 2 rides, and I'm really grateful that you're around for both, that you were along for both of them. But Lisa Mitchell, thank you so much for joining me for coffee this morning, and for always sharing your wisdom, and for meeting me for coffee in the real world when this whole thing is over.
Always. It's a pleasure.
But I'm so grateful for you. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for honoring me on the other side of my face today.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.